Hello, everybody. Hope you're all warm and safe, especially those of you here in the States in the path of the icy Death Storm 26. Here in Memphis, it is cold. We've got about 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches in places of a little bit of snow and a lot of very, very fine ice. Not really sleet, but it's kind of stuff just comes down in little bitty pebbles. And it's not too bad. It's cold, but considering that we have the possibility here of nasty ice storms with like 2 inches of ice on all the tree limbs and all the power lines, I wasn't sure if we're going to have a live stream today or that I'd have power or any warmth, but we're doing great. Sorry. So I hope you are all as well. Let me get through to some of the questions and I'll do some of my goof off stuff that from time to time. Victor's waiting for morning to get warmer. Victor, you are in Hawaii. The rest of us don't want to hear about it. Okay? Much love, but don't want to hear about how cold it is in Hawaii. Unless the world is changing more than it seems like. Hey, Greg there in the Arctic temps. Hey, Mark, Brad. Brad, did you get up really early or you still haven't gone to bed? So, it makes a difference as to your mindset. Hey, Matt Johnson down there in South Carolina. Actually, technically, I think he's a little bit north of me, but South Carolina. And, yeah, provisions are stocked. I had to go to the grocery store night before last. It was Day of the Dead in there. It was just a really bizarre bunch of people buying the last things they had. I just needed to get a few things that I'd forgotten. So I went about 10 o'clock at night, and it was a disappointing scene to see that if the zombie apocalypse does come, people will not handle it with any grace whatsoever. Hey, Eric, listening to one of my live chats mentioned a cap mod that can be done to a Silverface twin reverb tone stack. Now you can't find it. A little help? It's not to the tone stack. Most of the late 70s Fenders, well, some of them like pretty early in the 70s, when they changed the phase inverter, not the tone stack, when they changed the phase inverter to have the 330K grid leaks instead of the 1 megs, they changed the input coupling cap from a 1 nanofarad to a 10 nanofarad, which gives way too much low end, which makes the bass real flubby on the channel. If you've got one of those, change the 10 nanofarad cap to a 3 or 3.3 nanofarad cap. You don't have to change anything else, just that one cap, and then all of a sudden, all that flubby low end will go away, and your amp will feel and play a lot more like, say, a 65. So it's nice when just one little capacitor makes a big difference. Any 630 volt or 400 volt film cap will be fine. You won't hear any difference there. You can use the ceramic if you want. Though that'd be hard to find a ceramic in a 3.3 nanofarad for that voltage. Sorry, just free spinning. The other week I said the Germino Lead 35 was kind of like a lead JTM. Could I elaborate a little bit? Hey, Marcus Neiman. Well, I don't know about the Germino Lead 35. I said the Club 40. It is kind of a JTM 45, JTM 50. It's more of like a JTM 50 without some of the black flag stuff that came later. But it's not much of a, like the lead circuit. It doesn't have all the bright caps, or not as many bright caps, but it's on its way to being a lead. But it's not the same thing as what Marshall was doing in 67, let alone 68. Where do you get the yellow cloth solid wire for Fender amps? Building a 5E3 and the silicone and cloth wire I have is really bulky. Hey, Craig. Well, first of all, you can get the silicone and cloth wire is garbage. You can get from Mojitone, you can get from Hoffman amps, and you can get from Stu Mac. Those are all fine examples of the yellow cloth waxed wire if you want to do that. If you want to do it more modern, then go to Tube Depot and get some of their 22 gauge or 20 gauge Teflon coated wire, fantastic stuff. It's a much better quality wire than any of the old stuff. But if you want to replicate the old Fender stuff, Mojotone, Stu Mack, and Doug Hoffman amps are the places to go. Good stuff. I think it might be the same stuff at each place. I like buying from Hoffman because he's given a lot to the guitar community, and he can't, really compete with Mojotone as far as branding and advertising. So, but he consistently does good stuff at good prices. So, and I have no problem with Mojotone. I like those guys a lot as well. But they had a bigger investment to make. Hey, there you go. All right. You lifted the 10 nanofarad cap on the bass channel. Oh, okay, the plate shunt. Yeah, great. Very good to see that, Craig. Hey, Jonathan Rowland, can I settle a debate once and for all? Well, I'm not sure if I've ever done that, but I'll give it a shot. Well, that's no debate. Princeton reissue 65, yes. Princeton custom 68, no. Yeah, absolutely. The 68 custom is just a badly modded 65. They take the same board, all the same components, and then they butcher it to make it have, more gain, more mids, and it just makes it for a much noisier amp. They decrease the negative feedback. They make it even more mid-range prominent, which a stock Princeton already has a lot of mids given the cab size. Yeah, in general, with the sole exception of the 68 Pro Reverb that they got now, which is not actually a replica of any vintage Pro Reverb, let alone for 68. But it's a nice little amp the way it is. All the other 68 custom stuff they have out there is just a really badly modded 65 reissue. Get their 65 reissues because you don't have to undo a lot of the bad ideas. And they're a good amp. And also the 65 has been made for much longer than the 68s, so there are a lot of good condition used 65 reissues in the world. Hey, Andrew Henderson from Cairns, Australia. Hey, on what socks? That's the AC-15. It hand wired. It's all done. I was going to do a video on it yesterday, but I got about a third of the way through, and then a whole bunch of other stuff came up, so I got to finish it. I'm going to do a video showing the AC-15 finished, the AC-10 finished. I got the noise out of the effects loop. Shh. 64 deluxe reverbs finished. 59 Bassman is really close to being able to power it on again. One of my vendors made a mistake in my parts order, sent me one of something when I ordered 10. So I have one of the two caps I need for its bias section. And on the 61 Princeton, I made a mistake, and I got to order some different caps for the filtering because I forgot that model has 30, 30, 30, not 4 sections of 20. So, and I'm going to do that on Monday, though they're coming from Texas, so who knows with the ice. And I got a little box there that just arrived, which should have a whole new about 25 cable glands because I found out I was running out. So that'll also help me with that 61 Princeton. So lots of stuff going on. And another old deluxe reverb just showed up. So that Bravado is ready to go home. The two Voxes and the Bravado belong together, as does, and the Headstrong's done. It's got a new reverb tank and reverb cables. So all those are going to home at the same time next week, hopefully. My opinion on the new Benson Babylon. That's something people make to show off at NAMM, to show off what it's possible to do. No one in the world needs an 800 watt amp. Very few people could afford such a thing, and it'd be really, really loud. Benson's just showing off. It's a NAMM showpiece. It's the same way when Vox came out with the plexiglass AC-30 hand wired, so you could see all the insides. And Fender's done that before and stuff. It's a pretty thing, but do you want to pay for, or carry, or retube an 800 watt tube amp? It's a solution to a problem that has never existed, which makes it awesome from a certain point of view. Hey, Divin Master Islam. I hope you're not. I guess Devin Masters is lame. I guess you don't like Devin Masters, or you are Devin Masters, and you need counseling. I have not seen that. I have looked through emails, but man, I get so many emails. So I'll go back and look. I apologize. If you message me on Instagram, I guarantee I have not seen that. I'm technically still on Instagram. I'm thinking about leaving it because it's just become such a shit show. But I have all my notifications on Instagram turned off because I don't want to know when someone's coming out with a new blah 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 blah. You know, Instagram used to be about seeing photography and seeing the world, and it's just become TikTok for older people. Not much older, but no, I haven't seen the Friedman AC30 at NAMM. I've not been to NAMM. I have no interest in going to NAMM ever again, but I'll look for it after this, and I'll ask Dave about it. Maybe David send me one to show on the channel for you guys. Any experience with Colby-made Park amps? Yeah, Magic Matt. Mitch Colby does fantastic work. The Park stuff is he knocked it out of the park. But don't bunch. Phenomenal amps. About as good as it gets. Hey, Mac Flying V got a Tone King Metropolitan that has to use an imminent speaker due to clearance issues. Yeah. Fighting excessive brightness with a governor. Any suggestions? Thanks. Well, you could try I don't know, even within the range of imminences, there are different magnet sizes and dimensions. So I don't know that these will work. I've always found the Tone Tubby to be really kind of dark, the Cannabis Rex to be pretty dark, the Red, White, and Blues to be fairly dark. And then I don't know about the size, but Weber's got a lot of stuff with paper heavy doping and hemp for the dome and all that stuff might be a good option. But Governor is a bright speaker. The Governor and the Wizard are very bright speakers. But Eminence makes an awful lot of good stuff, but they make an awful lot of stuff, so it's hard to know which one that you'd like. Hey, Sean Eric Brooks. The other weekend I recommended trying his deluxe reverb with an external speaker cab. He did, and it gave him the extra headroom he needed. You're very welcome. Looking at the 4x10 Mesa open back cab. Thoughts? Well, Mesa cabs are always very high quality. And I don't always like the speakers that Mesa traditionally has used. But I don't know what the price is and what it compares to other things on the market. But, if you have the opportunity to try it, Mesa cabs are well built. They tend to use good quality speakers, and the wiring is usually pretty good. I have rarely really enjoyed the speakers that they chose, so I don't know what they're putting into their 4x10. But that's totally subjective. Omelet says, that's weird. Never heard Mesa and high quality in the same sentence. Yeah, they have no business making amplifiers, but their cabs were always quite good. The only problem with the Mesa cabs is that they created a market for black leather cabs, and black leather does not hold up with any kind of use. There's a reason Tolex is more popular. The Fillmore comes with creambacks. Well, I bet that would be fantastic, Sean. Play it and try one if you like it, if you can, or get a good return policy. But remember, returning speaker cabs is a pain in the butt. Are there any amps I believe are outdated? Probably a bunch, but most of them have just passed their sell-by date, and everyone knows it. I'd say the one that keeps lingering the most is the damn JC120 and its variations, its lower wattage variations. It was a great circuit for the time. It was a groundbreaking circuit for the time. The time was 1978, 76. It was fantastic. It would be like the world's best 8-track player in your bitchin' Camaro or your Pontiac Firebird. You could be Smokey and be the Bandit rather, and listen to all that's, listen to Car Wash and pick up chicks and with Mr. Microphone. All that's passed. The JC120 is still hanging around. It's noisy, has no headroom, it's built like shit. There are so many better options to give you a clean, solid state amp, and you can get one that's versatile. So I don't understand why people still cling on to those other than they're used to it. Hey, Magisterium. Good to see you with a name I recognize. Semper Fortis Nada says, I played the 65 and 68 before purchasing the 65. The 68 sounded really noisy and fizzy. Yes, they do that on purpose. I don't know why they think that's vintage. Hey, T. Greg. I use a filter cap on the bias pot and explain its function. Thanks for that. Oh, yeah, no problem. That's a Vishay 63 volt ASM 021 22 microfarad. You can use a 10 microfarad. Anything 10 microfarad to 47 will work. I have an awful lot of the 22s in stock, so I just throw a 22 on there. If I had a whole bunch of the 10s, I'd throw a 10 on there. So 63 volts minimum, 10 microfarad to 22 microfarad. All right, yeah, microfarad is going to be the range you want. And I like the Vishay 021 series ASMs. Well, Travis, the thing is, all these amps are here, then they go, and new amps come. It's an ever-shifting kaleidoscope. And there's some here you haven't seen yet. Any reason for electrolytic for cathode bypass caps? Yeah, Mazrang. We typically want values that are too large for film. I mean, if you want to use a 22 microfarad bypass cap, you can use a electrolytic. You can use a tantalum that's going to catch on fire, or you can use a film cap that's honking huge. So yeah, electrolytics, size, price, functionality. In a perfect world, we could use tantalums, but tantalum capacitors do not work in the world in which we live. Somebody needs to tell Mesa that. Now, the good news about Gibson buying Mesa is that may have forced them to stop using tantalums because tantalums cost more than electrolytics. So it's possible that with the takeover, they're going to get rid of the tantalums as a cost-saving measure and accidentally improve their amps in the process. Oh, let me do something on this camera. People were complaining last week about me making it vibrate. Let me do something real fast. Doop-a-doop-a-doo. Let's see. Oh, damn it. Wrong button. Sorry. Almost there. It's easier to do this from behind the camera, because that my right becomes my left and vice versa. Almost there. There we go. Active. Where's my button? There he goes. Meant to do that before the stream started, but now you have vibrate the desk. It more or less stays constant. So isn't that nice? Meant to do that before. Offset that crop, and we're back. All right. Where were we? Sorry about that. Read some info regarding shielding the tone cut pot on vintage AC30 to eliminate hum. Is there a better way to accomplish the same result? Do you have a specific video? I've been watching my videos, but there are a lot of videos. Yeah, there are a lot of videos. Usually it's not necessary because the signals that you're sending to that circuit are from the opposite sides of the phase inverter, so they're out of phase with each other. So any noise, which is common to both, so you can run it by an AC line that has 60 hertz or 50 hertz, depending where you live, hum or some multiple of that, it's going to be picked up by both of them, and it's going to cancel out because everything, they're 180 degrees out of phase. So any noise which is common to each gets canceled out, just like a humbucker. Now, it's possible if you were to use the run the cap or the resistor really close to something noisy, you know, I guess in this case with the pot, just the cap, it's possible the cap could pick up some noise. Not very likely. I've never needed to do it. Vox never needed to do it. Now, if you've had it right up against something really horribly noisy, potentially, but here's the thing. Dress the two wires together. So one's not by a noisy thing. If one's by a noisy thing and one's not, then that one's getting noise, that one's not. But if the wires are dressed together to and from the tone pot, any noise that this wire picks up, this wire is going to pick up the same amount, and they'll cancel out. If you want to heighten that, you twist them right at that section, so that if this one's a little bit closer here, then this one gets closer, and, you know, so they're always going to have the same amount of noise. Much easier in the shielding. Shielding is great. I use shielding when it's necessary, but particularly in a phase inverter connection like that, you've got a humbucker. You don't need to do additional shielding. Any thoughts on pairing a twin and super for dual mono like Tab Benoit? It'd be great. It would sound fantastic. It'd be really freaking loud and really, really heavy. And I think Tab Benoit probably has someone to carry them for him. So. Hey, Rocket Mass, just absently-mindedly powered off on too quickly on the Super Reverb. It's taking the rectifier with the fuse. Normal behavior. Any recommendations for modern GZ34 offerings? It's not normal behavior, but it's not too surprising. I tell you what, given the crazy price of some rectifier tubes these days and the crazy low price of JJs and Sovtechs, and that the Sovtech and JJs are just as good or just as bad as the $60 offerings from like Tungsol, just get a Sovtech in there or get a JJ in there, and you get a new one if it has a problem again. Now, you'd have to really power it on and off really freaking fast to take out a rectifier tube in a Super Reverb where things are healthy. You may have an arcing in your switch, or you may have something up with your filter caps that needs to be looked at. But, I mean, it's possible that it just happened, but that's not a failure mode that I've ever encountered in a healthy app. Building a 6G2, have hundreds of pounds of new old stock Allen Bradley carbon comps. Thanks to an uncle that works there, but all of them are 3 watts. Any potential problems? It'll work. You won't get much of the benefit, if any, of using carbon comps with 3 watts because they're not going to have any real nonlinearities. At the same time, you would be less likely to have any of the downside. They're going to be less shot noise and all that stuff, less hiss. So, I mean, you can use them, but I don't think you have any real benefit from them. Especially since someone out there would, some person building hi-fis in Japan would pay you an awful lot of money for those. And I think your 6G2 would sound just fine with 20-cent Yageo half-watt carbon films. Okay, I only know the Mitch Colby era park amps. I would not trust the people putting the name Hiwatt on things these days. But the Mitch Colby era parks were fantastic. What is happening when you turn your amp on without speakers? Can you give us a timeline, just a few seconds, maybe a minute? And what about a few minutes, volume up, wondering why no sound? It depends. If you have a Fender and all the jacks are tight, then when you have no speaker connected, no speaker plugged into the back, then the output has a full load. It is loaded to ground, total load. Won't hurt a thing unless you were to try to do a 3-hour gig with the amp on 7, strumming as hard as you can. So within a minute, a few seconds, a few minutes, nothing. If you have a Marshall that does not normal with output jack to ground when nothing is plugged in, then for a few seconds, nothing's going to happen because the output tubes aren't going to have time to warm up. There's not going to be any currents present. Maybe a minute, begin to get a little bit of stress. If you were to keep playing for a few minutes and keep playing and playing, wondering where your sound went, first of all, you have abysmal troubleshooting skills. Second of all, that's when you could have a flyback failure in the tube. That's why Brad and I I often install flyback diodes on 34s and other true tetrodes like pentodes like that. You could have a flyback event, which is where current voltage, which is supposed to go in one direction from screen to, from grid to plate, jumps to the cathode instead or something. It's a lot of things that can go wrong. It can damage your output transformer. It can burn up wires. It can be really sticky depending on how long and how loud the amp wants to be. The real danger is if you have everything connected to the amp, but you have a disconnected speaker in your cab, or there's a break in the solder joint on your speaker cable, or someone ran over, dropped a cymbal on your cable and you didn't know it, but there's an internal break. So you think it's connected, but there's not. Then your troubleshooting takes longer and longer. And then even with a Fender, in that case, there's no load because it's the jack switching is bypassed. The wiring inside the amp for protection cannot protect when something is plugged in. So make sure that all your cables are in good shape. Inspect your cables. If you have a switchcraft, unscrew the end, look at it, put it back, have it, go like that while passing signal, make sure there aren't any breaks. Maybe once a year, open up your speaker cabs, make sure if you have a closed back, make sure all the joints are good, that you have any quick connects, they're not, the quick connects aren't loose, et cetera, because it can really F up your amp. And usually it's very preventable. To the point where you need to, if you're gigging and you have a head and a cab, you need to make sure that you are observing a ritual. That, hey, I put the cab here, I plug the speaker cable into the back of the cab. I put the head on top, I plug the speaker cable into the head, and I verify with my little flashlight, because I carry a little flashlight on my gigs, having the right speaker jack. I've got my peanut selector switch set correctly, and then I plug in the power cable to the amp. And you reverse that when you unload. You've got to have these little rituals, because once you do it as a ritual, that's just what you do. You don't have to think about it anymore. It's like when you're driving, you're not like, check that mirror, look at the horizon, who's coming up behind me. All those things when you're 14 or 15, you're learning to drive, you have a little checklist of things you're doing all the time. And you do them to the point where you don't have to think about it. That's why it's important to build up these rituals with things like that, because then doing it the right way is just the only way you know how to do it. Thoughts on pairing an Alnico and a ceramic speaker in a 2x12 cabinet with a top boost style amp? Any particular recommendations? There's nothing wrong with that at all. Make sure that the efficiencies are similar enough so that one speaker isn't getting, drowning out the other, and make sure that, if you have say you have a 20 watt speaker and a 50 watt speaker with a 50 watt amp, a 100 watt amp, sorry, there are possible bad pairings. You know enough about this, Matt. You won't make any mistakes like that. I would say that a greenback or a G12H30 or a vintage 30 or a creamback 65 is always going to pair pretty well with either a Celestion Blue or the Celestion Silver, the 20 watt version used by Marshall rather than the Vox, and the Weber versions of that. Is a modern Fender tube basement head in any relation to the 50, 60, 70 models? No. Well, I don't know what Fender is making now, calling a tube basement. I've not looked at that. Um, so I don't know what Fender is making these days. The only thing I've seen that Fender has made is the 59 reissue tweed basement, which is specifically for guitar. Sorry, Sean. I don't keep up with everything Fender puts out. What would clipping the 10 picofarad bright cap in the reverb channel of a deluxe reverb get you? The one next to the reverb mix resistor. And don't use 12AU as verb driver. You can use a 12AU. You'll lose some level. Won't be healthy for the tube long term, but it won't hurt the amp. It'll hurt the tube. 12AT is better for that. You can use the 12AU if you really need to decrease the reverb level, though. You can also just change out. Well, that's probably the easier way to do it. But just know that 12AU will have a shorter life in there than a AT would. If you remove the bright cap in the reverb channel, you're removing some of the highs. In part of the dry, it just gives a little bit of life, because when you have a mixer like that, because you have a resistor going one place and another resistor going to ground, well, that junction is coming from the 3 meg here, and then it's like essentially 150K to ground at that point, because it's going through the reverb pot and another resistor to ground, and then that feeds the input of the reverb mixer stage. That's 3 meg and like 150K. You're losing a lot of signal there, and it can sound kind of lifeless. So they put a 10 picofarad cap there just to give a little bit of air. If you were to increase the value of that cap, my God, would it be painfully bright. If you take the cap out, it can just be a little bit dark. Some people might like that. It'll smooth up the entire sound of that channel, but it will no longer sound like a deluxe reverb. So it's up to you. It's easy to lift one end and hear for yourself. Some people have lost enough high end in their hearing, they're not going to hear the difference. There are a lot of deaf guitarists I've experienced. I don't know why. Hey, Patrick Lover. Yeah, 22 gauge stranded wire is pre-bonded. What you want is what's the word I'm looking for? Oh, crap. Not only will I look it up just so I remember what it's called, but I'll give you a link in the comments here. If I can remember how to type. Products. Wire sleeving stuff. Top coat hookup wire. All right, so let me send you here to Valve Storm. This is the good stuff. I love this stuff from Marshalls and Voxes and other things like that. There you go. Enjoy. Down in the comments there. Or not in the comments on the video, but the live chat. There you go. What AC15 model from Newlands would I recommend the most? I think that the AC15 Custom, so the AC15C 1X, is the best bang for the buck. Needs the least things changed as it comes from the factory. Followed by the AC15 hand-wired, which can sound fantastic, but they made it's weird. Like I said in the review on this amp a week and a half ago, Vox always takes 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. They've never just made the damn thing they used to make in 1965. They always make some little change because it has to be. I don't understand what it is. Is it like Vox? Are you watching this? Is it like a Gibson thing where like, hey, we're gonna make the world's best Les Paul Jr. reissue ever, or Les Paul reissue ever, but we're gonna get one little thing wrong so that next year we can fix that, and then you'll want to buy that model too for only $2,000 more. So I don't understand why Vox keeps getting little things wrong. The 15 hand-wired is a good amp, needs some help, and they get the tone stack wrong. The 15 Custom is a very, very good amp. Costs a lot less. It weighs more. It doesn't have as many input channels, input options as the hand-wired, but it has a good sounding tremolo. You know, so play them each. Just know that if you play the 15, because it costs more, ships with better sounding tubes, and the custom often has kind of crappy tubes that need to be changed out. Again, they don't have any amp that's perfect. I don't know why. What do I think about Mesa Express Plus 525 combo? I try not to. Those are horrible little amps. Really shitty. Thoughts on varying the value of an input resistor from the typical 68K? Depends on if you want more or less than 34K resistance at the grid. You can. The answer to that is a chapter. You got to understand what they're doing. What is the function of a grid leak? Sorry, of a grid stopper, and how does a typically, you know, high and low gain inputs work, and how that varies the impedance depending on and the level. It's a whole chapter's worth. I find most people will not hear any difference between 33K and 100K, but some people will. The reverbs in Swartz are as good as a small tank can get them. There's nothing wrong with the circuit. The issue is the very small tanks that they have to use because they're physically small amps. So it's a trade-off for the small size, but they sound really nice. I like the Alessandro. I got one. There's one in that, what's it called? Headstrong Little King. And I've checked them out in the deluxe reverbs. I find that they're kind of a specialty speaker. If I were in a recording studio, I'd want to have a cab with one of those versus, say, a Creamback 65 or G12C, which is more of an all-purpose speaker. Because to me, the Alessandro does not have the high frequency extension. It does not have the lows, but it has a certain something that just jumps out for like a lead thing. A lot of single note line stuff. So, you know, it's a good speaker. And for some people, it's the only speaker they'll ever need. I think it's kind of a specialty kind of thing. Can I make a lower wattage EL84 amp sound like an EL34 amp? No. You can use 6V6 for 34s, and you can use 6V6 for 6L6. You can't make a 84 amp sound like a 34 amp. Sorry. What do I think of 2-Rock amps? They're great. They're expensive, but not overpriced. And ponder that. Were I able to strip the coating off of my eyeglasses? I have not tried yet, Bill. But the thing is, I'm out of contacts, and so for me to do like a 30-minute experiment in the ultrasonic cleaner, it's 30 minutes of pretty much being blind, and I've not found that 30 minutes where I'm willing to stare at cloudy nothingness. Hey, Ruggish, thanks very much. I have not tried the Twin Sister, but I've tried quite a few of Dave's amps, and I know Dave, and I know his work. If the Twin Sister sounds the way you need an amp to sound, if that model does what you need an amp to do, it's a fantastic choice. No reservations. Because they're going to be built great, and you know, the Dirty Shirley and the Twin Sister and all these things, people love them, and they're really well built. But it's just a matter of subjective. You know, which variation on a Marshall you like is going to depend on a lot of things, and that's why Dave makes like what 10 different variations. Yeah, I like the 12GH30 paired with a blue or something. G12H30 has no real low end to speak of, but it has a lot of other things that it adds, which is nice. And you know, in a larger cabinet, it can develop some lows. Hey, Ma'am Troth, if a deluxe reverb has a high noise floor that goes away when pulling V4, is it likely an issue with plate resistors and vibrato channel? I can't tell you that, because that is just the beginning of the troubleshooting. That just tells you that the issue is somewhere in the vibrato channel, and it could be V4, or it could be V2, and it could be wiring to and fro, it could be a lot of issues. Could be a noisy cathode. It could be a failing cathode bypass cap due to the way the V4 bypass cap is shared between A and B. But that tells you the problem, and it could just be a bad tube in V2, and pulling V4 will still kill that noise. It tells you where to start looking. The first thing you do is measure your voltages compared to the voltages on a schematic for V2 and V4, and see where you're at. What are good replacement speakers for a Blues DeVille 410? Looking for something to break up at a lower volume if possible. Don't. The speakers in that are good, and buying 4 new 10-inch speakers for that is just kind of be a waste of money. You're not going to get any more breakup lowering the volume, lowering the efficiency of those speakers. It's the wrong way to do it. It is not a quiet amp. You can get one already made on Reverb or eBay, or you can make one yourself. It's a box with an input jack, an output jack, a 25K or 10K audio taper pot, and a knob. And you put it in put that together, and you put in the effects loop of a Hot Rod or Blues DeVille or whatever. Blues DeVille. And then there's your external master volume. And you turn that down, you turn your preamp up, and you got breakup at a lower volume, and you spend like $80. It's just a volume pot in a box, and do the low impedance nature of the loop in the Blues and Hot Rods, DeVilles and Deluxes. It'd be a 10K or 25K pot. That's the way to do it. Don't go spend $400 plus on speakers and then whatever labor would be, and then find yourself still not being happy. Go spend a little bit of money in the right place. And it's just gotta be a Blues DeVille at the end of all that. And notice I didn't say go have your Blues DeVille modded. It just sits on top of your amp with 2 little short cables that go into the input and output of the effects loop, and you're good to go. Thanks, Alex, FD2R. We are so far doing well here in Memphis. It's very cold, and I worry about a lot of my people in town who do not have insulated houses and can't afford to turn up the utility or don't have the right coats. But February and late January are always a cruel time here. Where do you get to the GA SC64? Let's see. I'll get you a link. Doopa-doopa-doo. Browse all products. Because Eminence. Ceramic. 12-inch. All right, let's find the damn thing. There you go. $147.99. There you go. That's where you buy one. One of the places to buy one. Let's see. Hey, TR Greg, I'm glad those helped. Yeah, I knew they weren't really boring. They'd be boring for most people, but for the right people, that's vital stuff. I wish I had access to those videos when I started out. A lot of the stuff I do on this channel is stuff that I wish I had. It's like the trouble these days, and I've been thinking about this because I'm thinking about doing a video about a second channel for my video and camera work. When I was a kid, if I had a film camera, I had to go to the library to get books on it. And the books were either things that were published with like charts and graphs and math and if this then that, or the Sunny 16 rule, where you had to have all these math things, but no practical applications for a 12-year-old who just got a film camera. Or like the Boy Scouts Guide to Photography, which was basically a comic book showing, hey, you point it there and you turn the thing and you push the button. There was very little actual information that was useful. You either had to approach it from a mathematician's point of view or a let's go have fun kind of thing. And it was really hard. Whereas today, we have all the information out there coming at us at once, but it's like drinking from a fire hose. You know, it's too much and half of it's junk. Is so many, so much bathwater, so few babies. It's there's too much information now on any subject, and there was almost none when I was trying to get it from the knowledge for myself. And so, in this aspect of my life with the amps, I'm trying to put this stuff out there. So, I, me at 10, me at 15, people who are interested in this thing can get the information and maybe not have to wade through all the channels of misinformation. Brad's doing the same thing, just like, hey, here's how this really works, because in everything, there are people trying to sell you shit. And because of that, we all end up buying shit. I've got shit here that has never been suitable for my needs, for like lighting and stuff and stands and stuff that was sold as being wonderful. And I've grudgingly made some of it be useful, but in that case, was it buy once, cry once? Much better idea than buying the shittiest version of something to avoid buying the good stuff. Anyway, I'm rambling, but it all kind of interweaves. Anyway, I try to be a source of actual information, but I don't want it to be just like, if you see here on this chart, as X increases, the Y exponentially, because people don't learn that way, or very few people actually learn that way. What's my opinion on the early 70s twin reverbs? I love 70s Fenders. The only problem with 70s Fenders, besides the fact that sometimes people lose the little ring that sits behind the jewel light and holds that part of the panel in place, and if that ring's not been available for years and getting one fabricated costs a lot. Anyway, I digress. Starting in some point in 73, they started overwaxing the boards. It's a pain in the butt to get rid of it, but it's possible. I've done it. Starting in late 72, I think, might have been earlier in 72. Anyways, in 72, they went from having a baffle which was screwed to cleats in the cab to having a baffle that was glued into dadoed slots in the cab. And the problem is both those baffles, 60 through 71 and 72 and onwards, were made of MDF, basically, particle board. Really good quality particle board. And if it gets wet, it turns into soggy cardboard. Or if it has too much shock, say a speaker, the amp's dropped and the speaker puts a lot of weight on it, it can just chip away and break out. If you have a broken or damaged baffle in a pre-72, you take the baffle out, you put screw a new baffle in place, you move on. Post 72, if you need to change the baffle, you've got to flush cut the baffle up against the cab, install new cleats, and then you can screw on a new baffle. If you're set up like Brad there with a wood shop, no problem. It's a Saturday afternoon, costs you $20 in wood. For the rest of us, we have to pay some fucker like Brad to do that. If you can find a carpenter who's willing to work on a guitar cab, I know how to do it, but I don't have the tools to safely flush cut that out quickly. I can do it, but it take me a while, and then I have to go back and sand it down, and I don't have a table saw, etc. It's a pain in the butt. Whereas if you have a pre-71 and you need a new baffle, I'll just order a replacement baffle from Mojo Tone for $80. Pop that on there, you're good to go. But circuit-wise, the early 70s twins are fantastic. Hey, Steve loves guitars. You got a Fender Champ 25 SE. You don't like the drive channel sound? Any fixes I would recommend? Yeah, overdrive pedals, distortion pedals, or get a different amp. Don't throw any money at a Champ 25 SE. It is what it is, and it ain't anything else. Sorry. I'm not being a snob. There are champs that are fantastic. If you had a 76 Vibro champ and a handful of basic overdrive pedals, you'd be happy as can be. But the Champ 25 SE is not that great. What's a good brand and source for 25 microfarad, 25 volt preamp electrolytics? Hey, Matthew Lynn, there is no good brand and source for 25 microfarad, 25 volt caps because the industry no longer makes 25 volt caps very often. There are some, but you pay a lot for them. They're specialty. The industry uses 22 microfarads now. So there are standard values that were in use in the 60s, which are not the standard values now. Electronically, you will not hear any difference. The behavior will be exactly the same. And given the tolerance of the caps in the 60s, they were probably somewhere between 22 and 30 microfarad anyway. And I don't bother the 25 volt caps because I like having a cap which can handle higher voltage than is present. So I like the 22 microfarad 63 volt caps from Vichy for electrolytic for cathode bypass caps, and you can use the 40 volt if you want, but I like the 63, and it's a 021 ASM, yeah, and they sell them at Mauser, they sell them at DigiKey, and they sell them at amplified parts there, where I send a link to the put a link up there for the speaker. Alessandro speaker, that same vendor also sells to you guys the what do you call it? Cathode bypass caps. Anyway, you see them in all my videos. The little blue ones. So the new 63 volt caps are physically smaller than the old 25 volt caps, and they're going to last decades. Given that they're rated for much more, there's only like 1 or 2 volts present on a cathode typically anyway. So those things are not going to be needed to be changed for 25, 30 years. I had the mini Dirty Shirley, loved the tone, but it had a serious lack of bottom end. I was using it with a 2x12 greenback closed back cab. Wrong speaker combo, or just need a higher watt version? Well, I don't know. I can't tell you that. I've not tried the mini Dirty Shirley. And I don't know what the dimensions of your cab were, Sean. But if you were to get in touch with Dave, if he's at NAMM this weekend, not right now, give him 2 weeks. Give Dave 2 weeks because there's NAMM, and it's all its kind of stress. And then there's the flood of orders after that, and recovering from NAMM flu. He may get NAMnesia. Sorry about that. Give him about 2 weeks and ask him, and he'll tell you. I doubt that he's making the Dirty Shirley to have too little low end. That said, it may have less low end than you want, which means that the circuit in the Dirty Shirley is closer to the lead spec, and you would probably be happier with some other spec, which he also makes. Yeah, the Araholica basis should take care of the bottom end. That's true to an extent, to a very large extent. To a very, very large extent. Most guitarists dial in more low end than they need to do. But it's nice for the amp to be able to do and then bring it back down. And there are times when a full low end is useful. But your larger point there, Araholic, is absolutely correct. And Mauser's, Greg says at Mauser the 40 volts are less than half the cost of the 63 volts. Well, maybe I'll switch to getting the 40 volts. I don't remember them having 40 volts before. Maybe I clicked the wrong thing when I was searching for them. But I remember looking at their 25 or 30, I think it was 25 volt version versus 63 volt version, and the 63 volt costs like a penny more, and you get a lot more out of it. All right, we're going to go to our first intermission pretty soon. Let's get a few more out of the way. What modern company is setting the standard in quality build and sound in amps? Well, there are two parts to that. Mark Bartel probably is doing the best work that is possible to do, both in terms. Well, he's very much a traditionalist in terms of what the circuit is doing in terms of sound, without being a Fender cloner. But he's got some innovative stuff, but he's not trying to make radical new sounds out of the guitar, just polishing existing ones. but he does impeccable work. The trouble with Mark, if I say Mark Bartel, his amps cost more than most of us will ever afford, and very few people will ever even get a chance to hear them. That's like saying, "Oh, you want a guitar amp? Just get a Dumble." Not quite as extreme, but it's on the path. So I would say maybe of the stuff that I'm aware of that you're going to have a realistic opportunity to play, maybe Two Rock these days. I don't know who else might be consistently hitting that point. I'd like to say this company and this company and this company and this company. You know, Mitch Colby is doing better work than that, but most of us can't afford that stuff. So, um, hmm. Of the stuff that you can go to a guitar store, might actually find, be able to play for yourself, and might actually be able to afford. Most of us could afford it if we wanted it. The Two Rock stuff is a really safe bet. Got a 68 Bassman head, first amp back in 79, mine naivete. Plugged it in the extension speaker jack by itself. When it, yeah, would not have destroyed your output transformer because on a Fender like that, the extension out jack is grounded out by the main jack, which is grounded out when nothing's plugged into it. So if you were plugged into the extension jack, the extension speaker jack, but nothing was plugged into the main output jack, your output transformer was fine because it was had a total load to ground. You wouldn't have heard anything, as you didn't, but I have not tried a Gretsch Playboy. Met several musicians recently who seem to think it is the best underrated amp made in the past 20 years. They're rare. Is it worth going on a quest? Well, if it's made in the last 20 years, I have never heard of it. I don't know who made it. Gretsch over the past 20 years has been, guitar-wise, either Fender's a little undervalued offshoot or Japanese and Chinese stuff. I'm not sure what's going on with Gretsch guitars. I doubt that they designed an amp. They might have wanted to have an amp that some other company was already making and put their badge on it. I could be wrong. Historically, I've never looked to any Gretsch to be a great amp. Most of them were just a Valco National that said Gretsch. And when we come back, we'll talk about reverb pedals with TB3240. We're going to take our first of two intermissions. We do a 3-hour chat on Saturdays. At the top of each hour, I do a 7-minute intermission. I can get another cup of coffee. You can stretch your legs and get a sandwich. Go grab some cheese or a pickle or whatever you want. It's up to you. The world's your oyster. You can grab those too. See you in a few. Sorry I'm late. I had to divest myself of all my wintry garb. I went outside because I'm an idiot. All right. Since there are some of you who have not been here before, and thank you for joining us, you're very welcome. Glad you made it. I do my live streams and live chats a little bit differently than other channels. I try to answer every question that comes in as much as I can within 3 hours in the order that they're asked. So I've gotten some live, some top chats, some donations. I appreciate each one. I will address each one when I get to them in the chat. I certainly don't want you to think that, hey, I gave him a top chat, he's not answering my question. I still answer them in the order they come in, though I will speak very eloquently when I answer yours if you do a top chat. But also, because I trying to do them all in order. If you ask me a question, I haven't answered it, make sure that I just haven't gotten to it yet before you ask it again and again. Please only ask any one question the once, and if you can put some question marks ahead like Graham here did, it helps it stand out from the chat. It's not necessary above Graham's with TBs, which I did see, but I don't always see them if they don't have the question marks. It's just a matter of making it easier for me to see them, which means you're more likely to get answered. All right, and be nice to everyone. What's the best reverb pedal I've heard? Never heard a good one. Heard some that are usable. Some of the ones which sound the most like a spring tank, and that's a really hard thing to do digitally, are too noisy to use. Some of the ones which do some fantastic other sounds are sometimes over the top. What's the German brand? Neu something. Not Neumann or Neutrik, it's Neu something else. Neufund or Neuswand or something like that. Phenomenal sounding pedals, way too much reverb to use in a band. You never hear that. If you're a one-man show and you're doing solo Cocteau Twin stuff, yeah, it's great to have all that. Neunaber, right, yeah, Neunaber, thanks Lucky Jim. It's fantastic to have 20 seconds of decay or infinite decay and all this stuff. If you're doing studio stuff and people are going to be listening late at night with headphones, you can do anything you want. In a band context, it just turns into mush. Let's see. Of the pedals I've tried, let's see, the Strymon Flint V1 hissy. The Strymon Blue Sky. I've not tried the Big Sky, is hissy. I just tried a Topanga Canyon from I can't remember the name of that company. It hissed. The quietest, or the I don't much care for it. The little Hall of Fame that TC makes is pretty good in a pinch. Most people in a band context will think it's all right. It's not it doesn't add a lot of noise. It's okay. It doesn't really sound great at anything, but it's not horrible and it's cheap. You can get one used for like $50. The MXR reverb pedal, the black one that just says reverb, is actually the best one I've found. It doesn't sound like a spring reverb, but it has really good plates and halls. It's not that expensive compared to some other stuff out there, and it doesn't hiss. Now, here's my thought, and I keep saying this every time I review a digital pedal. My iPhone, if I record something with my iPhone, it has no hiss. Whether I'm using the microphone of the phone or I'm plugging a lav mic into the iPhone and I play it back, there's no hiss. Now, audio in an iPhone, particularly incoming audio that we generate, is kind of an afterthought. It does not have the world's best AD converters in there. But if they can get that right in that little bitty space, and you're making a device specifically for audio, and you can't get that right, it drives me nuts. And all the stuff that I'm talking about hissing, that's with really, really high-end power supplies. I'm not using a wall wart with this. This is not some generic wall wart. I'm using really good, regulated, filtered, isolated supplies. Some of them are just noisy. And I don't care for digital reverb at this point because, here, I'll show you why. Let's see here. Right now, in post, you should be hearing reverb on, let me just turn it on just a second. Bus 1. I just click it once, Lyle. Let me turn the level down. All right, you should be hearing reverb on my voice now, and reverb on the guitar. Is that coming through? I'll give you more. Reverb. So if I have an amplifier that does not have reverb, I can add it in post, and it sounds better than any of that stuff. It just does. Sorry to be, I'm the anti, by the way, that's making me the anti old man shouting at clouds or not understanding digital technology. I'm like, I recognize when something's good. And the waves and other high-end plugins that are available in DAWs these days are amazing. The stuff sold to us in little black boxes to put on, to step on all night long, are usually kind of crappy things thrown out on the market because someone will buy that, especially if it's got a cool paint job. All that said, I do think that the MXR is pretty damn good. And if you just need something that will work fine, that people won't hear much of a difference on, makes it a little bit wet, vaguely springy, the Hall of Fame's a great, inexpensive pickup. Favorite 10 is for a 68 Princeton reissue. Either the G10C or the ET10 from Warehouse. Those are just great choices. Hey, Wrecking Crew, more of a recording question. Any preferred 12-inch speakers that seem to blend the best together? This also come down to comparing frequency curves. Well, that's a really deep subject. And a lot of times in my recording here, I'm just using a mic on one speaker. Sometimes I'll put two mics on one speaker. Sometimes I'll put a mic on each speaker. My shop cab, I've got the ET65 and the Veteran 30. They sound phenomenal together in the room. I usually put the mic on the ET65. I think it records better up close. But there are too many possible combinations. There are, if you were to go and get recorded by a world-class engineer, and you rented a great sounding, everyone said this is just like the best sounding Marshall 4x12 cab with pre-roll oscillations and all that, I guarantee you that engineer is going to spend the time to find which speaker sounds best for what he wants it to do in the mix out of those four speakers. And he might choose two different speakers out of that cab for different roles within a song, and that one might be the one he uses for solos, that's the one he uses for rhythm. And in the room, you're not hearing that, but critical listening, as far as microphones go, is an entirely different skill set than what it sounds like in the room. I don't care about comparing frequency curves. Frequency curves are very rough ideas of what something might actually be like in reality. Play the damn thing whenever possible. And remember that a speaker is not its own thing. A speaker has to be working with its baffle and its enclosure. I could have the world's best speaker, plug it into a guitar amp and hold the speaker up free in the air, and it would sound like an AM radio. It has to have the baffle to move against. It has to have the cabinet to develop its frequencies, how far it is from the wall, what room it's in. Most of you guys know all this, but it's easy to forget it because you're chasing. If only I had this one magical speaker, and for some reason the magical speaker is always the one that someone wants $400 for. And the guy who did the recording that makes you want that speaker, it was just a speaker he had, and he happened to go to a studio where the engineer was really good. And he might have used an old Alltech salt pepper shaker mic, so that the sound on that record is not at all what that speaker sounds like in reality. But So you think it's this, that guitar into that amp into that speaker. No, it's that engineer with that mic, with that console, that tape formula, that tape speed, that tape bias. It's really hard to chase recorded tones. Craig Kaufman, I'm the wrong person to ask. I hate G12T 75s. But if you're really into like early Maiden and Priest, you might love them. But it's not a thing I've ever enjoyed. Rocket Mass, maybe missing the obvious, but put me out of your misery. All right. As a layman observer, any reason to not just replace a loose/dirty tube socket over poking at the pins and repeated cleaning? Preservation? On some amps, vintage amps, whenever I can retain the original part, it keeps the value of the amp higher, and that's a factor that I cannot just say, "Oh, don't worry about it." I have to be aware of it. So when possible, that's important. Some other amps, some tube sockets and Marshalls, which use the little ring clamps, are really hard to change out, and the exact replacement has not been available for a long time. And if cleaning and retensioning does the trick, I'm able to do that usually more quickly than replacing the tube socket. But if a tube socket's had it, it's just had it, and I'll just change it out. I don't clutch my pearls over such things. But if someone brings in, say, that 59 Bassman, it came in with the octal socket for the rectifier tube had already been replaced, and the original octal sockets for the 6L6s are still original. Well, the non-original one that was in the rectifier socket was a terrible replacement part. I ordered one which is as close to the original as I could get. So from the outside, it will look original, though it's going to be obviously a new socket. And the old sockets, well, I could have replaced them so all three matched. That could possibly devalue the amp if he ever needs to sell it. So I just made sure that they were clean and had good tension on them. But I've also been doing this a while, and I know that I will try to clean and retention it. If I can't do it, I'll talk to the owner and say, "Yeah, do you want to look at it or do you want to play it? If you want to play it, we need to change this out." And you can, here are the old ones you can put in the bag, and if you ever sell the amp, you can say, "Hey, here are the original ones. You want to pop these in so you can look at it again." I'm not a collector. I roll my eyes a lot at the collector mentalities out there, but I have to be aware of it and honor my clients' possessions because they are not mine; they are theirs. How do you calculate current dissipation of individual power tubes in a 4-tube amp like a? Well, the Matthew, the best way to do it is to have a tube tester, and to know that the 4 tubes are matched. Once you know that the tubes are matched, so they're matched within a percentage that pleases you. Then you can just do the calculation DCR voltage drop across each primary and know what each pair is pulling and know roughly where everything is. If you were to install individual resistors from cathode to ground on 1 ohms, you know what each tube is doing, but you'd also have to roughly estimate what the screen current is. The best way to do it is to have matched tubes, either because you bought them new from a good vendor that you can trust are matching, or you have a very high-end tube tester like Brad's got, and you verify that yourself, at which point you don't have to individually bias each tube in an amp or measure the bias of each tube individually in the amp. You know that this one's going to be drawing what this one draws if everything in the circuit is the same. Yeah, I want to talk to you about it, Brad, see if you have any thoughts. You know, there's so many video and lighting and camera and photography channels out there, but so many of them are either idiots who never create anything other than the videos about it. They're not using their video gear to make videos. They're using their video gear to tell you about video gear, or they review every camera in the world, but they never go out and take photos, or if they do, they're shitty. Or it's always sponsored by blah 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 blah. And here's this. They sent me all these things. Aren't they fantastic? Well, are you using them 6 months later? Did they last? You never get the follow up. And I've, for instance, I'm using these newer lights, and while they work, the app sucks. This one, if it's on high power, the fan noise never turns off like it's supposed to. I wish I'd spent $50 more and bought the Amaranths. Now I know that. But the lights themselves are good. But man, just the fact that the app sucks is a daily drag. Totally worth spending 50 more bucks. Stuff like that. I have no experience with the Rivera Kiana 212. Sorry, RH. St. Clair Shores, Michigan. That must be cold as hell up there. Ooh, boggles the mind. I hate cold weather. It's bad enough here, but I've seen what they're getting in Chicago, and you're there or farther north. Yikes. Oh, yeah, the JHS black box. All right, that's kind of do everything that's possible to do with that amp. If you want more breakup at a lower volume than that, and between the master volume on that and using overdrive pedals doesn't get it for you, get a smaller wattage amp, lower wattage amp. You don't need to spend money on speakers. Hey, Nick Helm. Yeah, I don't like tone tubbies. I don't like them at all, and I don't like the Cannabis Rex. But earlier, the guy was asking about darker sounding speakers than the Governor, and if you want a dark speaker, tone tubbies and C Rexes are the way to go. You got a Pro Junior 4. Don't put any other speaker in your Pro Junior 4. Save up and buy a different amp. The Pro Junior is a terrible amp. The speaker's not going to make a huge difference, and you'll never get your money back on it. I'm not shitting on your amp, man, or trying to make you feel bad. There are a lot of really good inexpensive amps in the world, and the Pro Junior is not one of them. It's marketed as one. There's a million YouTube channels that tell you how great it is. Most of the YouTube channels that tell you what amps are great have no business telling you anything about amps because they don't know. Either they don't know or they've been paid. Don't throw any more money at your Pro Junior. Use it until you get something better, and you won't need to change the speaker in something better. Hey, Jose, your 2023 65 Princeton Reaper reissue buzzes when turned on like there's a dead tube. This will be the third issue I've had in the last 3 years. Is it worth keeping in the long run? Yeah, almost without a doubt, it's worth keeping. You bought it based on my recommendation. The amp sounds great at home, but you're considering getting something like the Milkman amp pedals, a backup solution if plugged into a cab. Well, maybe that might be a good thing for most musicians to have a backup. Real touring bands have backups for the backups. If every one of us carried a Sans amp or a Milkman or HX Stomp that could just go into the power section of an amp if in a pinch, that's fine. That's a separate issue. It buzzes when turned on. Do you mean that it buzzes when you turn it on and it just stays buzzing, or it buzzes and then fades out? Let me know that, because that's a very different thing. There could be a lot of things. Most likely a tube, but it could also be a need to have all its hardware tightened, or it could have a bad solder joint. It doesn't make it a bad amp. They're usually really good amps. They're very reliable long term, and I've got some videos up showing what any tech or many owners could do to make them very, very reliable down the road. But a 2023 Princeton should be fine if all the hardware is tight and all the tubes are good. And you can have the world's most expensive tube amp and still have a buzz because the tube fails. Tubes are glorified light bulbs. It can be a generic tube you bought used for $10. It can be a JJ that you bought for $25. It could be a Bugle Boy or Muller that you bought for $400. It could last 7 years, 7 months, or 7 minutes, and you'd have no way of knowing. Hey, Andy QL9WH. It's not the stream without Andy QL9WH. Some of these usernames, man. Hey, Andy. It's good to see you. Not Andy, but the stuff that I'm trying to make sense of. Yeah, the 59 bass mill LTD is a good amp. I've got some videos on that juiced. There are a couple mistakes they made in the circuit that are easy to fix. One of which you could do With the amp powered off, just with a pair of snippers and just snip one capacitor out, you'll have a much better sounding amp. But overall, the 59 Basement LTD is a good amp. I like it a lot. Hey, Greg, 6250, 70s PV Classic 250. Got the preamp is DOA. Do I think it's worth fixing? Thank you very much, Greg. They're interesting amps that I'm not sure if they're worth fixing for most people. The last one I did, I think it was a Deuce, which is a very similar amp. I think it has the same preamp, same phaser. Was a very expensive project. And I told the guy, are you sure you want me to do this? Well, he had a sentimental attachment to the amp. He wanted, it turned out to be over $400. At the end of which, he had a very heavy amp with almost no resale value that sounded pretty good if you really wanted it to sound like, I don't know, Skinnerd and Dr. Hook. It was just a very period sounding kind of thing. So is it worth it? For most people, I think not. It might be for you. It's possible to do, but there's so many more beloved, more versatile amps out there for much less money. I mean, you could buy a used AC15C1 for less than restoring that PV Classic 50, and it's just a really good amp out of the gate. Yeah, man, Brad was flexing all his cool tools. If I had the physical space to set up an area for woodwork, then I'd have zero money because I'd be buying all that stuff too. But man, those tools are so expensive. Hey, Juice, see my videos on the 59 Basement reissue. They have two 20 microfarad caps in parallel in the preamp filter node. The original amp had a 10 or an 8 microfarad cap there. So total capacitance for that node like 8. And they've got 40 in the reissue. And you just snip one of those out so you're back down to 10. You can take one out completely, change the other one to a 10, and you have the original amount of filtering. But at least snip one of the 20s because it does nothing good for the sound. It makes it feel sterile and it's bizarre. Way too much filtering for the first preamp stage. Yeah, but if you guys haven't seen Brad's video, was it day before yesterday, where he was making rear panels for a Fender and a Fender and a Marshall rather. Great work. So he makes the panels and he Tolexes them, shows all the stuff. And you were asking about you were saying about the tight bond, Brad. Yeah, I use it for spot repairs in an existing amp where the flap of Tolex needs to be tacked back down. If I were doing a whole thing from scratch, I'd be using contact cement like you do because you have a much better work time, and you have the ability to play tug of war a bit more and know how everything's gonna go. And cleanup is pretty easy, as you know. Bill, that is a deal. I appreciate that. I'll find that and get that to you. That'd be fantastic. Thank you. Because then I'd look like this. My Gandalfs. I need a haircut. Hey, Lewis X2, studied electrical engineering at college, can read schematics and build circuits, but I didn't get to the standard of being able to design my own circuits. Got any advice to bridge this gap? Well, yeah, start by building pedals and build since you already been doing have pretty good knowledge, you need to work on your soldering and understand what how the circuits work. I would say build a tube screamer and then figure out, really learn how that circuit works and say, all right, tube screamer, it's got a mid hump. What can I do to get rid of that mid hump? Can I make it a neutral sounding thing? Or, okay, well, let's do a big muff. What if we were to put a back sandal tone stack into a big muff? Play a lot of what ifs with some pedal designs. You're working at 9 to 12 volts. So you've got $80 in parts in your experiment and you can't kill yourself and nothing's going to catch on fire. And get a good handle on that. And then start with this guy right here. Fantastic website, valvewizard.co.uk, or from this way, probably for making more sense for you guys. And a good starting point, and he sells books. And I think his books would be a good place to start so you can figure out how tubes work, because tubes are kind of like transistors. If you squint your eyes just the right way, a transistor and a tube are doing much the same thing, except that the differences make all the difference. But as a general approach, whoa, Buffalo Gruffalo, thank you so much. That is very generous. I do appreciate that very much. And Merlin's book arrived today. Speaking of which, I just put the valvewizard.co.uk link up there. That's Merlin he's talking about. So he got Merlin's book. Buffalo Gruffalo, thank you so much. That is very kind of you. I appreciate that very much. Where did I learn my amp repair knowledge? I have done no formal training. I've never had an electronics class. I've never had a math class past geometry in high school. I was an English major. So as far as books, Shakespeare, Faulkner, I can tell you all kinds of books. Very few of them are about amps, but the one I just mentioned from Merlin's a really good starting point. I came to this because I was a musician. And like I said, English major, which means I'm qualified to say, wouldst thou like fries with that? Sorry, I'll use that joke every time I get a chance. And my shit would break, and I couldn't afford to take it to a guy like me now. So I would go to the library and get books on stuff and halfway understand it. And some Craig Anderton article in the back of a guitar player would fill in a little piece of the puzzle and all that. I just made a lot of mistakes and blew stuff up and burnt shit and did everything wrong until I figured out all the ways to do it wrong, and what was left was the right way. And I started on my way. But mine is not a path that I could ever recommend to anyone. Most people would have crashed and burned. Somehow I've faked it until I maked it. And here I be. A lot less fakery these days, but I've had to teach myself. Now that doesn't mean I've not done the learning. I've sat down with my pencils and my graphs and plotted load lines, and I've got so many spreadsheets that I've created for myself where I can calculate straight RC filter values, and I can calculate cathode bypass filter values, because that's not a straight RC calculation, and all these things that you have to know how to do that some people keep in their head as math. Like Brad was doing bias on an amp the other day, and he had this, and then he had a calculator and this calculator. I've got a spreadsheet. I tell what the plate voltage is. I make a note for myself on the spreadsheet of what the bias voltage at the grid is. I know what the DCR from primary to center tap on each side of the output transformer is. I know what the tube wattage rating is. I measure the current, and I know what 50, 60, and 70% goals are when I'm measuring the current. And I can pretty much tell, oh, I'm way over 70 or way I'm under 50. Before I even go forward, I'll need to tweak the bias. And then I know what my actual dissipation is. But I'm not sitting there with a calculator because I'm terrible with numbers. I don't have any retention of numbers, but I am very good, ironically, at making spreadsheets, because I used to do database design and web design when I was doing IT stuff. So if I can spreadsheet it, I can do it. Do you ever look at the insides of the Fender Clapton models? Yeah, most of them are overpriced nothings. The one to watch out for is the Tremolux. Has a terrible circuit flaw in it. Eats gain and makes it for noisy tremolo. And the boost thing in the guitar, if you mean that, it's a pretty crappy sounding by modern standards 20 dB boost. But he got away with it with the lace sensors. SG Holt, thank you, sir. Started having a lot of noise related to the volume pot. It sounded like a short. Any ideas on the 65 Princeton reverb? It may just be a dirty pot. It could be a bad solder joint, could be a bad pot. If it's a dirty pot, then turning the pot back and forth many, many, many times can help. And then it's not that difficult to clean the pot. It could be a broken solder joint. That's easy to see. To pull the amp out, you look at, you'll see my videos on how to remove the chassis from the head, because you want to make sure that it's not catching the foil and stuff. But it's not that difficult to do. You can visually inspect that. And if it's a pot, a replacement pot from the same source I linked above for the speaker is like $3 to $4 for the pot. Shipping's gonna be like $8. Take a tech 15 minutes to swap it out. A little bit longer than that. You gotta undo all the knobs. So let's say 45 minutes. Yeah, not the end of the world. Those are my ideas. The other thing it can be is a preamp tube with a linking grid, in which case it'd be V1. So before you do anything else, change out V1, because if you've got leaking voltage at the grid, you're going to have noise on the volume pot. But I'm not sure what you mean by it sounded like a short. Sounding like a short would be cutting out completely or going silent halfway through its travel, which is also possible. It could be a tin whisker. So if you have a can of compressed air, that can help with that. I've not run into that many tin whiskers on the modern Fender pots, but all the modern Marshalls that have those little square green chiclet pots on the inside, those are really prone to tin whiskers. Got a 68 AB 165 Bassman, sounded fine, but 2 days after you got it, started crackling and buzzing loudly out of nowhere. Could it be a failed caps? Hey, Alex Ortega. I doubt it's failed caps if it's crackling and buzzing. It sounds like you got a bad one or more bad preamp tubes. Most likely preamp tubes. It could be a power tube, but you probably just have either a bad preamp tube or dirty preamp tube sockets. And one of them, if you were to just go move it a little bit, it might go away, because you can have one of those old 68s or 66s that, hey, if the tube's here, it's fine. If you move it a fraction of a millimeter, it's not making good contact. But those are all easy things to clean. Ahem. What do I think about those micro 1 to 2 watt amps with small power tubes? I think they're silly. And if you want to build one for yourself, that's great. But it's a silly thing. Not anything I think about, really. Well, Emery Train, the thing I've noticed, or Mr. E Train, the thing, okay. I see what you did that. I see what you did there. Train ride. That's not right key. All right, I'll stop half singing on the stream for you guys. Mr. E Train, kind of piss off the Valco people. Yeah, there are a lot of people who are crazy about those Valco made Gretsch amps, but I've noticed there are a lot of people in the world who are just crazy. So the Valco made amps are not that great. I've fixed quite a few. Hey, A. Joseph, I get asked about this every stream, and every stream I pretty much point you to the Voxes. There's some Dr. Z variants that are really good if you want to try out the Z-Rec, and Top Hat's got some cool stuff that's a little bit in between Vox and Marshall, but they're styled like a Vox. And since they're styled like a Vox, people hear them like a Vox. I like Top Hats a lot, and I like Dr. Z's a lot. But if you want the AC30 kind of thing in a 15-watt package, it's really hard to beat the AC15C1, or if you can afford it, the C1X, which is the one with the Celestian blue. Steve, you give me $20, $25 almost every stream. I'm beginning to think you have a crush on me. I really appreciate it, Steve. Thanks. Oh, man. Yeah, Jupiter caps. Ah. All right. I don't like the Super Delta Kings because they don't like you. They don't have any respect for you. They don't finish building their amps, and they don't build their amps safely, and they don't last, and they don't sound good. They're just here to take your money. So no, I don't like them, and there's nothing I can say that needs to be fixed on them, because that means that you should buy one expecting it to be fixed, as opposed to saying, that's not ready for prime time, it doesn't deserve my money. There are so many better things out there. Don't buy any modern Supros. Hey, NYC Geology, I have 80s Carvin tube amps. Well, yeah, they're cheap these days, but I'm not a big fan of them. They're built even cheaper than PVs, and I'm not a fan of the construction. But hey, if you got one and it's working, that's great. You can build that city. What voltage should you run an Amp RX Brown box for a 75 Super Reverb and an AC30C2? You usually play both amps at the same time through a radial ABY pedal. Hey, Natas. Well, the AC30C2 wants to be run at 120 volts. The 75 Super Reverb probably wants to run about 117. And since the AC30C2, I believe, takes a 4 amp or 3 amp fuse, and the Super Reverb is going to take a 3 or 4 amp fuse, I'm not sure that the Brown box could handle 6 to 8 amps. I think it's a 5 amp limit on that, isn't it, at once? So stick the Brown box on the 75 Super Reverb, give it 117-ish, and do the Vox with wall voltage, because it was designed for it. You'll be happy. Don't buy Jupiter caps. Silly, expensive Instagram bullshit. Now, I'll take issue with you there, Brad. Take issue with you. Let me get something, a prop, make my point. All right. Coincidentally here, got a 63 or 62, 63 AC30 there playing. And it's got old Phillips mustards, and it's got Wema trophy foil, the golds, and 2 Vichy MKT 1813s, not some Jupiters. And I've got here this 59 Bassman in progress. And you'll notice no Jupiter caps to be found, but you can't tell me that it's not pretty with those Vichys. They're really pretty caps. It's going to sound fantastic. So Brad's point is correct. Electronically, you don't need to have Jupiters. And these look just as pretty to me. I mean, these are really jewel-like. You'll see it better in the final video. But here's the thing. If a client comes to me and we talk about the caps, I say, I can get you an amp that's going to sound perfect for about $1 to $3 per capacitor. And he wants the Jupiters, I'll say, it's going to sound just as good, but you're going to spend $7 to $15 per capacitor. If the client says, well, I like the looks of the Jupiters, I want the Jupiters, I know that they have really deep pockets. And that puts me in a really good position, since at the core of all this is some level of financial transaction. I'm like, okay, well, then he must have one of those jobs. Therefore, he'll understand that I need to bill for the time it takes me to put all the Jupiters into the parts list and to go through the whole checkout process. I thought about his amp this week while I was waiting for parts to arrive. That's 15 minutes right there. Because if doctors and attorneys are going to do that to us, you know what I mean? So, I'm saying that partially in jest, but Man, this stuff can be pretty without spending a fortune. Put your money where it counts, like blue jewel lights on a fender, instant tonal upgrade, or blue LED in a pedal. I've not tried the spring-loaded Danelectro pedals because Danelectro makes things that are plastic that don't last. Hey, Will Schaff. I mean, I talk about this almost every stream. It seems like used to like it, but I found that long term that they have reliability issues. I don't think MOSFETs are up for. Pardon me, I got hiccups. MOSFETs don't seem to be able to deal with the heat generated by the circuit over time, and I'm not a huge fan as a result. I think a good master volume, especially in conjunction with the great attenuators and reactive loads on the market today, are a better way just to go. No idea who Jeffrey Fala is. Hope he does great work. I hope he doesn't do true point-to-point. Hopefully he's using some kind of board, eyelet, or turret, or whatever, with leads going from there to the pots and from there to the sockets, because true point-to-point is horrible. And the title of the book is a little bit triggering for me, How to Hot Ride Your Fender Amp. I think it doesn't sound promising to me, but I could be wrong. Thanks, Martin. Do I have any favorite? My favorite guitar is a Southern Jumbo because I've had it the longest. Really had a long time, since 2000 or 1999. It's Eric Johnson Strat. Just feels perfect to my hands. It's certainly heavy in comparison to the K-line. You know, the K-line's what, 5.5, 6 pounds. This is 8 or 9. I guess probably 8. But it just feels right. I'm used to it. Everything I know, every scratch on here I've put on here, every dent on here I've put on here, every little thing. And God help me, I love that 335, which is good because I paid way more than I had at the time for it. I had an opportunity to get it, and I got it, and it was more money than I had any business spending on it, especially given how I play. But my God, it's beautiful. Now, those are my favorites. They're not necessarily my best, but I love them. Where are we? We lost where we were. People talking to each other. Must have been during the last break, maybe. G major rack. Well, yeah, those are pretty cool, but not. Most people don't want to deal with a rack anything these days. Django Malo looking for earlier breakup. Man, if you don't have enough early breakup out of a 6G tube or whatever it is, deluxe, which is what the Ombre is, what the hell are you looking for? If you swap out V1 for something less beefy, you're going to have later breakup anyway. You want a real hot 12X7 if you want more breakup. That is like ZZ Top's first album in a box, literally. Here's the thing. If I play into that amp with a Strat, it breaks up pretty well. If I plug into with my SG or the P90s or the 335, it breaks up a lot more. So I don't think you need. I don't know where this concept of we need to have earlier breakup, change tubes, blah 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 blah. You find the amp that does the thing that you want it to do at the output level that you want with the guitar. And if one of those factors is not there, you're not going to get the right result. Go back, was it last stream or the time before? I had 2 streams ago. I had the Casino versus the Strat into the Germino. And with this Strat, the Germino was just barely on the edge of breakup. And I go to the P90s in the Casino, and all of a sudden it's like Angus, AC/DC rhythm sounds. And that's just from changing the guitar. I didn't change tubes. I didn't change settings on the amp. Maybe I'm just missing something. But no, if you can't get enough enough breakup out of a Sir Ombre, that has no headroom. The amp has no headroom. Yeah, the Surfer Bear stuff's pretty cool, Sean, but it's a lot of money and physically huge to carry for that. And the tanks that they use are just they're good spec, made for them, but they're made by Belton Accutronics, and so they're not going to last because they have the same little stupid quick connects and plastic where they should not. Well, Brad, I have a lot of thoughts on that too, but here's the thing. I can plug my iPhone into my USB and be charging with it while recording. And, again, if they can get it right in a damn phone, which is not for audio. Where was I? We've got forced air. It's a gas furnace, but it's controlled by electricity. So if electricity goes out, we have no heat. So we've got floor vents and floor returns. This house, when built, had none of that. It had, I suspect, originally 2, but now only 1 coal fireplaces. Which maybe at some point I'll convert the coal fireplace to, in a perfect world, gas for some nice ceramic logs. But I have a feeling that gas won't be much of an option 20 years from now. I do miss having a gas stove. If the power goes out and you have a gas stove, you can still feed yourself. Let's see Magisterium. Don't have any thoughts on singled-in amps using 6SJ7s. I don't play around with what if single-ended little projects anymore. If I'm gonna build something, I want to build something for gigging. And I have my preferences. I know the amps that I really love. I talked about the Benson Babylon at the top of the stream, Zero Artillery. I doubt it's underpowered. I imagine it has as much power as the transformers exist to allow it to provide. If it had more than that, no one could physically pick it up. Thank you, Edmund. I appreciate that. Sorry, not Edmund. I saw the Mon. Edward, thank you very much. Have I ever run across a 1987 type circuit that has a pair of 41 and 48 clipping diodes that didn't sound bad? Most of the... See, it's hard for me to tell because I've not had a Jose amp in that Jose did. And I've not had a Jose amp in that Dave Friedman did. I've had Jose modded Marshalls come in that random schmo did, and they never seem to sound very good. But also, they're tack soldered. They're missing some components that I've seen in the Jose stuff. And if I were to do it, I would not be doing tack soldered crap. But I'm not a big fan of the sound of diode clipping myself, especially with 4148s. I prefer chaining red LEDs and doing red and yellow pairings and stuff. There are ways to do it that I think sounds better. And there are better sounding diodes than 4148s, but there are many ways to do that, and where you put the master volume, where you do this, where you do that, and how does it affect your loading. And a lot of guys just shove some diodes they have laying around in there, and they're barely, floating in air basically. So a lot of it can be done well. It's never been a sound that I love. I know Jace at Head First loves it, and I don't know if Dave loves it, but Dave appreciates it. Yeah, I had a plush Royal 1060S in. It was basically a twin reverb with Danny Partridge's interior decorator. I don't know what's different about an older logo Top Hat Club Royale versus the new ones. I don't know, but Brian at Top Hat, I think his name is Brian, was a really nice guy when I spoke to him, and he has he builds good amps. So I doubt there's a bad year or a good year, but call him or email him and see what he says. He might say, "Yeah, we had some issues in '87. We had them all ironed out by late '89." I don't know. Well, I'm sorry your opinion is so humble there, John Swade. Best sounding small amps compared to what? Um, I'm not saying I'm the end all be all, but I get to hear a lot more amps than most people on the planet. And the Pro Junior, aside from being built insultingly bad, doesn't really sound that good. Maybe it sounds better than stuff that's even crappier. I mean, comparison to maybe a pig nose, yeah, it's godlike. But compared to a Super Champ, it's a piece of shit. Not a Super Champ, a Vibro Champ. Fender used to make really good cheap amps, and you know. Three or four max 12AX7, that's a lot of gain stages. Tweed Dumble, good low mid push, 6L6s. What my recommendation for that? Cheap and reliable. Tweed Dumble S sound. You are describing, sir, the normal channel of a deluxe reverb with a good overdrive pedal. Maybe even just like a Boss blues thing, blues driver. The right guitarist, the right guitar, Boss blues driver, the normal channel of a deluxe reverb will do that. Go in the reverb channel if you want the Dumbly thing. If your Dumbly thing means Robin Ford. But you're not going to get an amp that has that level of gain you're describing by itself and be cheap and be good and be reliable. Remember, deluxe reverbs are one of the most popular amps of all time for very good reason. They almost always work from almost all styles of music. They're not going to work for a lot of metal. They're not going to work for a classical guitar, but you can make it work for an awful lot of stuff, from Zeppelin to jazz to hip hop to country. And you can use this. You can have a top 40 gig, a country gig, and a church gig, and use the same amp with pretty much the same settings. And you just use different pedals with each one. All right, we're at the top of the next hour. We're going to take our second intermission, and I will see you guys in a little bit. I come inside in time, but it takes me a while to take off my coat and my scarf and all that. Hat hair. What you gonna do? All right. I wish you much joy of it, but it's not that it sounds bad, though it does. Why? Anyway, okay. Buy anything you want, reward bad companies for shitting on you, and say thank you, sir, I like another. Save $1,000, Sean. Get the used ones. Let's see. Hey, Octopus Ears. Yeah, I talked about the Benson at the top of the stream. Let's see. Yeah, I miss Robert. He was my favorite rat fink. It was before he did the rat fink picture profile. For years, he was Louis from Casablanca. We had that's how we had the beginning of our beautiful friendship. I was really devastated to hear of him going. Seems like last week. It's been over a year, I guess, now. Hey, Raulino, thanks very much. Stay tuned. I got a video coming maybe tomorrow, maybe Monday, showing how I was able to at least get rid of all the hum that was always in the background. And it certainly did reduce, if not fully eliminate, the noise of the loop itself. It's still not a great loop design, but I do have a fix for that. It's coming soon. Oh, that's great, Brad. I never knew that. He never sent me any short stories. Let's see. Yeah, I like the Z-Rec. It's not a top boost AC30 though. It's a very specialized kind of thing, which I like. I like to have one of those next to an AC30. I'm wondering if, just a second, there's a weird sound outside. Weirdo is taking a snow shovel to the sidewalk in front of his house, a couple houses down. What kind of weirdo owns a snow shovel in Memphis, Tennessee? And there's going to be like a 40-foot stretch of sidewalk with no snow and ice on it, and every other sidewalk in the entire town will be covered. Huh. What is the difference in the AC15C1 and CC1 omelet socks? CC is the custom classic. The C is the custom. The custom classic needs more work to be made right. Is not built as well. Doesn't have as many. It doesn't only has the one channel, and doesn't have a cut circuit, which is a crucial thing to have. I would recommend getting the custom any day. The CC now, no. Back 20 years ago, 15 years ago, it was a great option. But given the relatively low price of a used custom series, don't get the custom classic. Let's see. Yeah, Matt, I've had my share. Usually I'll get in there with a Q-tip and some acetone to get most of it off before I heat it up. But Brad likes to use his fuse sucker upper. Not fuse, fume sucker upper. Hey, Frank. Just saw you get in here. Let's see. Man, did Amnesia. They're both great amps. They're very, very different sounding amps, no matter that they both have 4x10 cabinets. If you want something that gets dirty, they both do it. If you want something that gets clean, they both do it, but they do it in very different ways. You could be happy with either, but you'll only be thrilled with one of them. And that's up to you. Got a 64 Deluxe Reverb hand wire that for some reason is on the edge of breakup when it used to be just past 4. Well, I don't know where it is on the edge of breakup now, but used to be they have to turn it up more. Could be a tube, could be a lot of things. There's so many things that can go wrong in the 64 hand-wired version, but it's probably a tube, especially given how interactive V1 and V2 are on that amp. If one of them's acting up, both channels be acting up. Edge at 3 used to be 4. Okay, yeah. Try a different tube before you do anything else. That's the best thing to try. Hey, Brian. Yeah, it's just something beyond the price range for modding an existing amp. But if you're building something from scratch, you can do all kinds of cool stuff. What I call the wire for the output jack on a Strat has 2 wires inside. I call it Herald. I just call it the output wiring. Hey, Lewis. My advice to you would be to build those as separate things in case your tastes or needs change. It's also much easier to say, all right, here's all the stuff that needs this power supply for the tubes, and here's all the stuff that only needs 9 to 12 volts, and you can keep things a little simpler. But if you want to build it all in one, it's certainly possible. Silver-faced Vibrolux reverb with a waxy board. What are my thoughts on replacing the entire eyelet board with a quality one instead of trying to clean it? I would ask Guinness, well, if you can get one where the layout is exactly the same, and you can transfer the exact mounting holes so you don't have to drill new holes in the chassis, it might be faster for you to change out the board. You just move all the, get the wax off the caps and stuff and move them all over. Usually I don't deal with that because it's really hard to get a board where the layout's exactly the same. And it's not that hard. If I'm going to take everything off it, I'll just make the board new. It's unless it's severely discolored or severely got a fungus or anything, I can clean that thing out. Hey, Natimo Guitar. All octal with a Pentode and V2. 120 hertz buzz, and my Pentodes keep going permanently microphonic after about 10 minutes of playtime. Well, the microphonics are unrelated to anything you're doing, probably. Most Pentodes, unless you're talking about like a 6L6 or 6V6 or something, they're not, if you're talking about a Pentode octal preamp tube, they're probably going to be microphonic. In terms of 120 hertz buzz, there are a lot of causes for that, and I would have to have your amp in front of me to tell you. Here's the thing to remember. When you're building an amp, and you have all these sections, since you're building it, you have the ability to say, I'm going to take the input straight into the from the input jack straight to the input of the phase inverter. And so I only have the phase inverter and the output tubes. I'm going to get all that working right. Then I'm going to give it, I plan to have 3 triode stages ahead of the phase inverter. I'm going to run into the first triode stage and test, and then run that to the phase inverter and make sure that's all working. Then I'll do the next triode. You can do it one at a time. So when you have a problem area, you can find it. But I can't tell you any more from here on an amp where I don't know the circuit and I don't know how it was built. Entry-level basic beginner amp for a guy who wants to learn to build and repair tube amps. Champ kit. Hey, breath time breath, or breathe time breathe. I guess breath time breath. Loose electric is crap. Don't buy any loose electric stuff. He has terrible customer support, terrible troubleshooting skills. Does not know how to. Despite 2 opportunities, he never diagnosed a bad choke in one of his amps for a customer, and all he does is either copy existing Fender circuits and paint everything red, so you don't immediately know that it's just a straight copy of a Fender, or he combines aspects of different amps from Fender and Marshall without understanding how things work, and so you have terrible gain staging and you have terrible frequency responses here and there. I don't know how he got lucky enough to have people buy this stuff, but it's crap. It's overpriced crap. Don't buy it. For that much money, you could buy an amplifier. No experience with Thsinde amps, John Lawrence. Sorry. Thanks, Banjo. Just want to touch on a comment you read last week before you unsubscribed. The guy who advised me to cosplay as Canadian speaks for himself. Stay home if I'm concerned for my safety. Well, I'm not sure why I should care. All right. Thank you. Thank you for wasting my time. Have you ever heard of a Mark DV? Yeah. Isn't that the Mark bass amp thing? Ooh, you are getting very sleepy. I wish it worked on myself. I can't sleep at night. Let's see, we're caught up to where we were at the last break. Yeah, PLPOR. I checked the news on the last break. I'm gonna have to watch it. I missed the big Greenland debacle last Saturday morning because I didn't look at the news before coming on the stream. But he tacoed again, so maybe that's going away. It's just ridiculous. It's just ridiculous picking fights with Europe and such a losing fight and being such an idiot in the process. And now ICE needs to self-deport. Fucking murderers. I think people are seeing them for what they are now. It can't go much farther, much longer. Good for Minnesota. Hey, Michael 3599, Vox Custom Series, Vox Handwired Series, Dr. Z, Tone King. Not Tone King, sorry. Not Tone King. What's it called? Top Hat. And the Sir Badger should be in that discussion as well. Oh, and the David Grissom amps from PRS are also great contenders in that price range. The DGT amps. I tend to prefer combos as a player, and I prefer heads as a tech because it takes up less space in my shop. but I've always preferred combos for playing, because I found myself at one point with a 50-watt head and 2x4x12s and a 92 Honda Civic, and 4x12s and the Civic didn't play well together. And I could have done all those gigs with a deluxe reverb in hindsight. Thanks, Vinicius. Appreciate that. That's very kind of you. Frank doing the drive-by. Don't buy a matchless. Matchlesses need too much work to be made safe for their own selves. They melt their face plates and rear plates and kill their tubes because they have never learned how to bias the damn thing. And when it does need to be recapped, you're looking at a very expensive job, because the silly way it's burned. Oh man, Martin, I will keep burns in my thoughts and watch out for all the slee timorous creatures. Was it sleek timorous beasties? Let's see where we are. Hey, TW1986. Well, good. There's nothing wrong with it. Hey, Boar. Hey, Boar makes good stuff. I've got, right there is a 59 Bassman, the one I was picking up earlier, and it's got a 62 replacement power transformer from Schumacher. But, sometimes you got to change out the power transformer, and the Hey Boar is just as good a choice as an old Schumacher. What's the standard plate voltage range of an early 70s 100-watt super lead at 120 volts AC? Oh man, early 70s could be up to 500 something volts, but some of them are only 400 volts. But though typically it's the 50 watters that are lower. It really depends on what year they made. Not all of them had 500 volts. 425 is not a unusual. That's kind of middle of the road, typical, especially if you got a newer power transformer. That's probably pretty damn good. It may not be what the amp originally had, but it'd be a lot easier on current production tubes. Thank you, Semper. I appreciate that. Let's see. Hey, Perry Vargas, got a Sir Badger 18. Love it. Only downside is when at higher gain settings, like above 6 on the drive, it squeals when receiving input from drive section of pedal board. The idea is you probably have a microphonic preamp tube, which is not the fault of the amp, or you have a faulty cable somewhere and you're only hearing that issue at highest gains. But I would expect it to be a microphonic preamp tube. What's the point where repairs stop making sense financially on an early 70s Fender Twin? It's hard to say, because there's what the amp is worth on the resale market. Like, you get an amp for $800 and it takes $400 to make it great. Well, you can't really sell it on today's market for $1,200 to $1,400. So is it worth it? At the same time, what would it cost to build that amp from scratch? You're looking at $3,000 easily. And when that say a 76 Twin, when it's restored, it's going to sound every bit as good. If it's restored right, it's capable of sounding every bit as good as a 2-rock that someone pays $5,000 for. So is it worth spending $1,400 to get an amp that will play right next to a $5,000 amp and you won't miss anything? Or is that too much money to put into an amp from 1970, especially on an early 70s Fender Twin before they even did any of the nonlinear stuff? I think I've never seen one go upside down. You get a 72, 73 twin, unless it just needs a new baffle, new speakers, all new tubes, new transformers. At some point it can be, but most of them don't need all that. Most of them need this and that. Uh, and they're really good amps. They're just larger and louder than most people want for their gigs these days. Got two champs, Tweed 61 and Silverface 75. I find there's a big difference in volume out between them. Tweed at 3 equals Silverface on 10. Yeah, they're very different sounding amps. They're very different circuits. Um, um, you're going to have a lot of overdrive on the Tweed. You're not going to have much overdrive at all on the 75. That said, you're not really going to get more output out of that 75. And you can lift the negative feedback, get a little bit, but not a ton. You could run your 75 into an extension 2x12 and get a big volume boost, though. But they're very different amps for very different purposes. Still haven't worked on or had a rev come in kaboom. No, you're fine with the Habor. It's fine with the Habor. I don't have sleep apnea. I just have insomnia, which I always have had all my life. You should email him and hope that he has time to check his emails. He's catching up. Daniel Mincher, you got a customer wanting a service and overhaul on a JCM 900 before he goes on tour. You're nervous, you don't cock it up. Any advice on things to check or mod to improve reliability? Cards on the table. If you're not sure you can do it and he's going on a tour, recommend him to a tech who can do it. Send him to a tech that'll make his amp bulletproof, hopefully, before he goes on tour, and learn for guys who are never going to be more than 30 minutes away. Don't learn and make a mistake on something that's going to be touring. It's not fair. And it puts you in a bad place where if you make any mistake at all, it will ruin your reputation or whatever reputation you might have had. And it, leaves a sour taste. Well, however much money he would pay you to do it is not worth the risk. There's a reason. There's a reason you should charge a lot less when you're learning, and sometimes when you're learning, you should turn down work. I don't know how to be more honest. I have to be honest about it. It's not about making us all feel good. It's about knowing what the right thing to do is. I don't think you should take that amp in if you're at all nervous, because it's just a JCM 900. That's not an amp that once you have experience, that's not an amp to be nervous about. Sorry, don't mean to make you feel bad. We just have to we have to know our limitations. If I had a Crown Macrotech power amp come in for repair and it was a critical thing for a touring band, I'd say, I am not the solid state expert on this. Let me say, you send it to this guy I know in Jackson, Mississippi, send it to this guy I know in St. Louis. They live and breathe this stuff. They will do a better job repairing this. I don't need to learn on your the thing that you're going to depend on, because I get high wattage solid state stuff very infrequently. It's a different mindset. Hey, Hal. Yeah. We're in for some good stuff coming. February always sucks here. I've got a birthday in early February, and man, my birthday parties when I was a kid, everyone else would go to their pool party or, everyone playing outside, and there'd be a jumpy thing, and everything would be great, or we'd all play baseball or whatever. Mine, everyone would sit inside, watch, watch it rain outside. It was always cold and wet. People would come in all bundled up. And this is when I was really little, it was before there were VCRs. And my parents, in retrospect, I realize now they didn't have any money. My dad would go to the library and rent a a, 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 screen and a projector and check out movies. And so my birthday parties were always like 10 9-year-olds stuck in a small room while sleet's outside, watching an old Sinbad in the Eye of the Tiger movie, or Sinbad's Seventh Voyage, Golden Voyage of Sinbad, all this stuff, Jason the Argonauts. I loved all the Harryhausen stuff. So that was the big thing. They'd have popcorn and cake and orange juice, and rent the projector and the screen and the movies from the library. So I go to someone's summer birthday party and hate them. Hate them, and I hate all their friends who had such a good time and everyone loved it. They have a water slide, a slip and slide, or they just have a hose with a sprinkler set up. And I'm like, "Ugh." The best, most memorable birthday of my life when I was a kid was when my parents had a little bit more money and they did a skating party. So everyone was at the roller skating rink. This is like 1977, 78. And they, because it was all us kids, they kept playing the Star Wars disco theme when turn on all the laser lights. It was a big deal. And then one of my kids got run over by a teenager, and the teenager broke my friend's arm by skating over it, and that was the end of the party. But I remember it. Sorry to go off on a tangent. Life before VCRs, let alone streaming. Let's see. I'm not a fan of any of the other PRS amps, Sean Eric, but the DGT amps are really nice. Breath Time Breath, email me and I'll look for that. Hey Vinicius, just have fun with it. I'm about to do a video talking about how to think of the treble response when in a Vox, because it's not like a Fender or Marshall. It's not like you just have the presence circuit and you have the treble. The way the cut circuit works and the way the treble affects the entire frequency response and how many the harmonic overtones you get and the nature of the distortion. It's very different in a Vox. And people, like on the AC 10 video I did where I said, well, it doesn't have a cut circuit, so it's too bright. People are like, oh, just turn it on the treble. I'm like, yeah, that's not how that works, okay? If you turn on the treble, you're going to have tons of mids. You're not going to have any distortion. You're not going to have any of the qualities that make the Vox sound. You have to attenuate the highs at the output tubes with a cut circuit to get the Vox sound. It's not like a Fender. So I'm not talking that way to you. Anyway, I'm gonna do a video on that, but I've got to get the sarcasm and mild burning anger out of my voice first. It's so hard to stay balanced about some of this stuff. Hey, the Fuchs stuff is great. Blackjack Classic and ODS2. Yeah, they're good amps. I don't like some of the way he builds stuff, but it's more shop talk. It's not a criticism. It's just I prefer to do it other ways. But yeah, Andy does good stuff. Hey, I thought I had this do not disturb. Just a second. Where's do not disturb? Sorry, just a second. Can you make that go away, love? Thanks. All right. Where were we? Here we are. Sorry about that. I forgot to put it in do not disturb, so it disturbed me. Do I have suggested bias for a vintage Super 65 Super Reverb? Yeah, I like it. I aim for about 55 to 55% typically. The factory usually is cooler than that, but the trouble with the modern wall voltages, it can be a lot colder than that. So now the factory bias is not always what you find in one these days, but is more noticeable on the amps which do not have a biased trim pot. But I have worked out. I've had enough original examples come in that was like, hey, unless I change this resistor from 27K to 15K, this thing is never going to bias over 40%. But yeah, I like about 55% on a super reverb. I'll go hotter than that depending on the player, but generally. If it's straightened amp is fine at all settings, it does not lean preamp tube, it means you probably have a problem in one of your pedals or one of the cables between your pedals. If the amp is fine with the guitar straight in, it's almost guaranteed to be an issue with your pedal board somehow. It could be a power supply thing. It could be a lot of things. It's just under very rare circumstances will there be enough level boost from a pedal or cumulative pedals that you will send a preamp node into clipping. I mean, actual cut-off clipping. It can happen. It just doesn't happen very often with grid clamping. But mostly you're going to have a problem on your pedal board, whether in the cabling or in the power supply or in one of the pedals. And the way to check that is to say which pedal's causing it. All right, here's the trouble, TW. P10Q, P10R, I can never remember combinations of letters and numbers. So I might have. I didn't stick in my mind. That one over there has got two different ones up top and two different on the bottoms, and maybe they're Q's and R's, but I don't remember. And two of them are original to the amp, two of them are replacement from like 61, 62. So I don't know if they're. It would not surprise me if Fender had some originals with mismatched speakers, because Fender used what he had until he was out. It's not like, hey, as of January 2nd, 1961, this part will change. It was like, hey, we're going to change parts, but we still have 527 of this one. So the next couple amps will still have this until we run out. I don't mean to make a joke of it. I don't have any anxiety issues. Or I'd never be able to do this. Insomnia, because it's just hard to shut this off. You know, I never find sleep easily, and I can think all kinds of thoughts. And I'll go to bed at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning and lay in bed for an hour and a half before I finally bore myself to sleep. Drives me nuts. Hey, Wes. Happy belated. I hope that you had many glorious epiphanies. And I hope that no one ever gave you combination Christmas and birthday presents, because that would be especially tacky with that 12-day spread. And happy birthday to you coming up, Doug, too. Yeah, it was a cattle and bread Topanga. That's the one, Pastor. It was hissy. And Natalis, if you got 125 volts coming out of the wall outlet at times, and the brown box is what you got, whatever setting will get you below 120 or below. So I don't know what the notches, I don't know what the selections on the brown box are off the top of my head. If you can get between 117 and 120, you're fine. Just watch the total load. So the brown box is going to have a fuse. That fuse may be 5 amps, maybe 7 amps. I don't remember what it is. Look at the fuses on the back of your amp. If one's a 3 amp and one's a 5 amp on your amps, you can't use both of those at the same time with the brown box. Now, you can have them both plugged in to an outlet strip plugged in the brown box, but you can't turn them both on or you'll blow a fuse on your brown box. Hey, Ernie, I believe it, I hope it's Ernie. For a starting young guitarist, 12 years old, thank you for joining us. What would I recommend, analog or digital route? Money is tight. I would suggest digital because it is much less expensive and it is very, very versatile. The real question first is, do you need others to be able to hear you now at this point of your journey, or do you need to just be able to hear yourself? If you only need to be able to hear yourself, you can get almost any digital modeling pedal, whether it's a Tonex or an HX Stomp or an old pod, or just plugging into your laptop if you have access to a laptop. With some of the free software like GarageBand, there are plugins. Is the Reaver going crazy? What's going on? Huh. There's no issue. Anyway, if you don't need other people to be able to hear you, don't need an amplifier. You need something that makes guitar sounds. You can use a plug-in for that. And you can listen to headphones, or you can listen to small speakers, or just your laptop. If you need others to hear you and to be at the levels that you would play within a band, I don't know where you're at in the world and what brands are going to be more or less expensive to you. But the Roland Microcube, the Boss Katana 50, the Catalyst by Line 6 are all good, relatively inexpensive amplifiers that will work for you. My concern is that when you have an amp that costs so little, that can be the line 6, that can be the Boss, that can be the Roland. They are priced to be kind of disposable for the Western market. So an amp that is only $300 from a lot of people's perspective is still $300. And if it only lasts 3 to 5 years, that can be a problem. So I would be careful not to overspend for 200 watts when you're not going to need 200 watts. If you're 12 years old and you're playing well enough that you need to play a huge concert, someone will lend you a better amp for that. But if you want to play with your friends, play small shows as you feel comfortable doing that, that little Katana 50 that here at least you can get used for $250 is a fantastic choice. But yeah, I would suggest getting a good basic HX Stomp kind of thing, or a pod, whether that's to go into headphones or your computer, or to get a Katana thing that you can play also with headphones in your bedroom, but also people can hear you and it's loud enough to play with the drummer. That's what I would suggest. And then later, if you have access and more money, and you know that you've played enough real amps that that's the one to go for, then worry about tube stuff. This tube stuff is great, but so is the digital for making music, just for following an idea, especially for getting better at it. It's the important thing is to play, to find sounds, find ways to make new sounds, and to find what you love about it. So good luck to you, and I hope you come back. Thank you, iMusic Sean. That's very kind of you. I don't have any opinions on the Yamaha G100 because I have no experience with it. I don't know what that is. Brad has some thoughts there, though. Anytime Brad has an opinion on things, unless it directly contradicts my own, he's right. If it contradicts me, he's drunk. Other than that. Hey, Joe Meyer, got to reach you, Princeton. Number one input is ground hum. Number two input is clean. What's that about? All right. Number one input, you probably have a bad 1 meg resistor going to ground, or a bad connection to the chassis, or in a pinch, a bad jack. If you use the number two input, it's going to be going, its grid leak is going to be the other 68K resistor as opposed to the 1 meg. So that'd be an easy thing to fix, most likely. Or it could just be a bad solder joint on the reissue, since the jacks are on the board, and if the solder joint is broken, it may not be normaling correctly. Nothing to worry about, though. Oh, the tiny delay was just for a second when I did this test, just because to make sure that I wasn't getting anything weird. Because sometimes on the stream the audio just takes off and does crazy distortion stuff. One of the things I always have to listen back on is how much the audio is randomly staticky. It's been improved an awful lot since I found that there are some new native versions of some plugins that I've been using that work much better than the new operating system. But I think there's still a few, and even if the plugins aren't active, if they're just loaded into memory on standby, it seems to affect things. So I may be having to change over to DaVinci for recording the audio for my produced videos. If it doesn't have the issue, it's possible that the issue's with the driver for the Motu. I don't know. All right, we're coming towards the end. I'm making sure I'm not missing anything. Good. Okay. We're towards the end of the stream, and we're actually caught up this time. Last week, there was no way I could ever get caught up. I don't know what happened. I just had all the people at once. And while it's gratifying, I always feel bad when I don't answer someone's question. But here, you guys are having more fun talking to each other than talking to me, so I feel like I'm excluded from my own stream. I'll reserve opinion and judgment on the output learning stuff because I do know and respect and trust some of the guys apparently involved with that, but I have some reservations, and I don't want to. AI seems a lot more A than I these days, but we'll see. My only concern is that we got a whole world of grandmas who can't operate a remote control. Then we're going to be asking them to tell the difference between deep fakes and real stuff. Hey, I missed your comment, Stepford. Well, put it in here again. I missed it, and I don't want to scroll looking for it. Comment again. We're not done yet. It is a buzzword city is a thing, and AI is certainly a real threat in a lot of ways. AI has some great possibilities, but processing images and data from the James Webb Telescope, I'm fine with it using AI for that. That's fantastic. A lot of the other things we're doing with it, I don't need to have zanier AI commercials out there. All right, I'm waiting for your comments, Stepford. Come on, Stepford. Give us some crash pilots. Oh, there's one from Remco I missed. An experience with Fender Red Knob Twin. I've one of these new filter caps and has quite some hum. Pleasantly surprised about the tone. Yeah, I think I'm glad. Yeah, it has the same issue with the low voltage power supply as the blues and hot rod amps do. So if you look at my blues and hot rods playlist, you'll see me addressing the low voltage supply issue in those amps is the same diodes and resistors that fail in the red knob twin power supply, in addition to all the other filter caps. And the 220K resistors in the power supply often fail. The 100K and 82K plates in the phase inverter often fail. And the low voltage supply can also damage the caps in the low voltage supply. So those are the main issues. That plus a lot of specialized dirty jacks with hyper crazy switching stuff. All right. Now we're Stepford has re-put it up. Just about the glory of the AC15C1. Okay, good. Okay, I'm sorry I missed your glory post. Hey, Crussell Rowe, good username there. Yeah, Pisvane valves are crap. Sadly, we were really hoping for better when that stuff was announced, and it's just garbage. Don't waste your money on it. You're not going to save anything. Don't know anything about the YCS50. There aren't that many trainers that have made their way down to Memphis, Tennessee, and some of them have been terrible, and some of them have been phenomenal. I love the Bassmaster. Some of the smaller amps were just cheap things that they churned out to keep things for sale in shops at a low price, and it shows. But man, the Bassmaster, the YBA ones and such, and phenomenal amps. Crazy ground schemes, way too bright, linear taper volume pots that'll take your head off, and very unsafe circuit breakers versus fuses. But all that's fixable. At the end of it, you've got something that rivals any Marshall for build quality and sound quality. And they're rugged and they're reliable, and they used to be much cheaper. Hey, turret strips. There's nothing wrong with turret strips. Turret strips are fine. Tag boards are fine. Whatever works. It's really just a matter of how the leads are attached. And if you're doing true mil spec, or are you doing multiple wraps, so everything's on there really tight, and then you become everyone's enemy if they need to work on your amp. There's nothing wrong with a well-built PTP on turret strips. Well, it's not true point to point if you're using turret strips. Point to point is, I've got this tube socket, and it goes through a capacitor and a resistor to this tube socket. That's the issue that I have, is that you end up with a rat's nest where everything's just kind of up in the air and you don't have any control over the space between things. Much better to have a very neat, organized, laid out board with space between components, and then an intelligent lead dress. So all the noisy stuff is away from the quiet stuff, and the stuff from this triode is away from the stuff from this triode. And so it's still hand soldered, but using wires and boards as opposed to point to point. Point to point is a term that gets really badly misused these days, and it's frustrating to a lot of us. Freedom Grower got a Princeton with a Gremlin. His circuit board can recommend anyone to hardwire. No. Circuit board Princetons are, if it's one of the reissues, are very easily fixed. And there's not a gremlin in there that a good tech cannot solve for you for much less, and you won't have any improvement. There's no benefit to hardwiring it unless someone very, very skilled does it with a lot. Most people are just slapping Mojo Tone boards in there and copying what Leo did, kind of, sort of. And that's not enough. That's just not enough to give you any benefit over the stock one. Yeah, Pisvane. Yeah, Brad's filling you in on the Pisvane stuff. I was really disappointed, because I'm like, hey, good, the new factory's doing this stuff and the price is great. Let's try some. And they're the tubes that go ping, ping. It's the most microphonic stuff in the world. More microphonic than EIs, for those of you who know what I'm talking about. All right, on that note, we're about to in for the day. And I'm going to go watch it snow. I might put on the fake fire in the living room and make a pot of tea. Maybe I'll just sit down with my Beatles book and remember how things go that I used to know how it went. I haven't played too long. I always forget to turn off the clarity. It probably sounds like hell to you guys out there. Yeah, it's Eastman and me forgetting how that part goes. I'm thinking of a Pink Floyd song that's an open G, which I can't really do with this, but it's a pretty sound guitar. When I turn off the plugin that eliminates everything that's not a human voice. That's what I did last week when I was trying to show you guys what the low volume amp in the room sounded like to this mic. I forgot to turn the clarity off, so it sounded like ass. Another point, I'll demonstrate that. But you can use a deluxe reverb or other amp. I think that was a super reverb or something. Very quietly in the room. You don't always need to have a bedroom amp. Hey, Brad, return to Kaffel Wolfenstein. Hell, you can just go to Minneapolis. All right, see you guys. Everyone be well. Everyone be good. Stay warm when applicable. Not you Australians. Later.